Are we together? Surely, Kenyans, where are you? Are we together? Yes, we are. My name is Edith Kimani. It's such a delight to be your host this afternoon for our unconferencing session. I am a journalist with DW News. I host a program called The 77%, and I am so delighted to be here with my colleague Annabelle Steffers. She's come all the way from, were you in Bonn? Yeah, from Bonn. So that's why she's dressed like it's summertime. But anyway, Annabelle is a senior editor from the audio team. She's actually the lead of the audio team in our program management department. So she knows a lot about innovation. But beyond that, I've worked with her a lot in Africa. We used to shoot the 77% together. She was my producer. And for a time there, she used to work with our team in Kinshasa. So karibu Nairobi. Makofi kwa Annabelle tafadhali. So before we begin, I have two lovely people here in front of me. These are our sign language interpreters. We have Victor Mbatia. And we also have Fraser Wanjiko. Thank you very much. So this is what's going to happen. We have set aside 5 questions which we want to explore today. Essentially, we've heard a lot of things about the state of media, particularly journalism, and we're asking, is it in a state of flux? Is it dying? And if so, what can we as journalists, stakeholders, media practitioners do about it? So we'll start this round by inviting 3 people onto the stage, and how this is going to work is, after they've already discussed for about 2 minutes, we'll then ask one of you, or 2 of you, or 3 of you to come and replace them and give us your thoughts and opinions. We really want to hear your perspective, so please don't be shy. So, without much ado, let's invite Benson Githaiga onto the stage. He is the head of innovation and community manager at the Aga Khan University. He's also my really good friend. Thanks, Benson. We are also joined by Janet Muriku. You've just heard from her if you are on this panel that has just concluded. She's from Uganda. And she works with Radio Passes, which you tell me is a bit religious, but it also serves as community media. Patches, Radio Patches, karibu sana. And last but not least, we have Melissa Mbugwa. If you've ever listened to a podcast in Africa, she's probably had something to do with it. She's currently an innovator and entrepreneur at Radio Workshop. So, karibuni. So we'll start with the first question. Annabelle, if we can have the slides. We're working on the slides. What's new? So, here's our first question. And we only have one microphone there, so I would like you to just give me your cold thoughts opening. We, being media, journalists, are no longer the most powerful storytellers in society. Facts or fiction? Facts or fiction? Let me see. Facts? Okay, so a majority of you agree. How many of you disagree that media are still the best storytellers in society? Wow, guys, you're sending this industry to the grave very fast. Benson, let me hear from you. Facts, why?
Most of us probably got the news today from influencers and not from mainstream media.
Okay, that's true, particularly if you're coming from the context of Africa. From Nigeria alone, about 68% of a population who were surveyed by Reuters Institute said they get their news from TikTok. And that's very high compared to the global average, which is 40%. So you're right. Most of us do get our news from social media. But does it mean that because they have the attention, they're still the best storytellers?
They're not the most authoritative. They have no media ethics, for example. But definitely, the news comes from them first.
Okay, let me hear from Melissa.
Audiences are so much more aware, so much more connected, and they can hold storytellers.
Please speak closer to the microphone.
Audiences are so much more aware, so much more opinionated and knowledgeable, and can just hold storytellers, including journalists, to account. So it's a two-way street now, two-way conversation, and no longer, journalists are no longer the authority. You know, power is more distributed.
Okay, Janet, let me hear your cold thoughts.
Very simple for me. Smartphones in wrong hands. That is where the trouble is. That's why we're going to the grave.
Please expound on that.
Well, I mean, currently, I can't just give you the exact number, but the estimated number of people who are on social media, I think is getting more than the ones who are not. And so these people who are on social media are called citizen journalists. They are just unethical and do not know what they're doing. I see you right there. I do not know what you're doing. I am not asking any questions. I just take a photo of you and post. Followers are running right after that and they're saying the news is here. Nobody's asking any questions about what was she doing exactly? The 5 W's and H are not answered. And so that is where the problem is.
Is that where the problem is, or is it with us? Because we are choosing to view them. We're choosing them over legacy media.
Well, that becomes now a tip for us as journalists, because what comes of us is now running to follow up. What happened exactly? Now we're coming to answer the 5 W's and H. Looks more like we are clarifying on what is on social media. That's what we're doing more.
Okay, let me hear from the audience, because there was a very strong, resounding yes that we are no longer the best storytellers. Esther Kazungu, I'm coming straight for you because you are, I would say, a newsfluencer. We're hearing that you're not ethical. You don't have any guardrails. Why should we be listening to you?
Maybe other people don't have, but for me, I come to such spaces to learn from actual journalists. So there is that percentage that don't have the media ethics, but there's this other percentage that does have that. So it's just to filter, really.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. So if our job as journalists, Benson, is to filter, as Esther is saying, have we then outsourced the duty of agenda setting to influencers and newsfluencers?
Wow, I just finished hosting the Africa Editors Congress yesterday. We were hosting it at the Aga Khan University. And I would say the editors are still very relevant in terms of setting the agenda and the narrative for the continent. But the influencers really are the ones that people are trusting and feeling and relating to. So yes, we've kind of outsourced it to some extent.
So Janet, what are we doing here? Why are we DW? Why is there KBC? Why is there an NTV? Why do media houses exist?
Again, I think like we're called, we're still traditional. We're still waiting for the 7 a.m. news. We're still waiting for the 1 p.m. news. We're still waiting for the 9 p.m. news. Social media is not going to do that. Even when she's ethical, she's not going to do that. She gets her facts how she thinks they are right, and boom, they are right there.
Okay.
So that's still very challenging. Unless we decide to say, like the traditional media, we are going to be having news every other time, then maybe somewhere would be competing. But for now, with the fact that they get it now and drop it now, you don't even have time because you're waiting for your 1 p.m. schedule, you're waiting for 3 p.m. schedule.
Okay, but doesn't that mean then that the value of journalists, the intrinsic value of our work is diminished? Because even if there's a breaking news situation, the truth is most people will not go to Esther for the news. They'll come to a reputable media house.
My confidence in the traditional media is that even when the audience gets it from social media, about 70% of them would still sit back and say, I'm waiting for the news on the radio, on the TV, or in the newspaper. That is where our confidence is.
Okay, pass the mic, the heat is rising.
I'll be honest, I think mainstream media right now is just fact-checking.
Yes? Yes? Okay, let me come to you. Tell me why.
I'll just give this an analogy. Oh, hi. My name is Jennifer Kaberi. I work from Total News. I work with children, so I can give you how they use and consume content. So, the news, the traditional legacy media is like the parent. When you are growing up. Please, Gen Zs, don't whatever me here. When you were growing up, you used to actually to go outside the house and play football outside the house. And then you will hear, oh, so-and-so has done this and this. So, and it will be a whole story in the playground. But for you to verify if this is true, what do you go? You go to your parent or to your older sister. So that's what legacy media is. But legacy media, have they... anti.com, for Kenyans, you understand what I mean. Are they going with the time so that that child or us can actually go and verify that information?
All right. So what I'm hearing from you is that influence we may have lost, but institutional influence is still very much alive. Okay, I want us to watch a little video. This is what happened when the German foreign minister, Vadapol, came to Kenya. He had an interview with, you might know her if you're from Kenya, with this young lady, and it went viral. Within a few minutes, this video had 1.1 million clicks. Let's watch it together. Sound? Ah, manze watu wa sound mnachoma. Please give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Okay, we don't have sound. Please read the captions. Let's try one more time.
Listen up. We're going to pick the German foreign minister. Let's go show him what the Kenyan Dania culture is all about. Twende basi. Eba, customer. Mia, ciao, Mia, customer.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you. Welcome. Twende basi.
Hello, everybody. But I doubt whether the main purpose of this car is transportation.
It is transportation, but it's more like a feeling.
Yeah.
So basically, you feel like you're in a portable nightclub. You feel like you're in a nightclub?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to make sure you give us 100 bucks, which is 70 cents. That's how much we charge each person who sits in here. That's why I was like, Mia. That means 100. We don't use cards, primarily matatus and ganyas.
Yeah.
We use M-Pesa. So that's the number right there.
This is like PayPal or something.
Exactly. We also have a very popular dance move.
Yeah.
It's called Anguka Nayo. So this is what we do. This. Yes. That was awesome. It costs around 60,000 euros.
60,000 euros.
Yes. To buy it, to paint it, to install all these, the lights, everything. So it's an expensive affair. So Minister, before you leave, you have to try your hand at it. We have ugali, we have skuma, so we're going to show you all of it.
Yeah.
And this is a really common place for people to just come have lunch because it's very affordable. So she's the owner of the kibanda. Her name is Mary.
Mary.
Yes.
I'm Johanna. Good to see you, Mary.
How much can a plate cost? 300 Kenya shillings. €1.80. Yes. So very affordable.
I'm your new customer.
Yes.
This is known from the German kitchen as well.
Exactly. Turn it over. Yes. Very good.
This is the very beginning now, yeah? Okay. That's a puppet. It's easy, yeah? Okay.
Yes. Just like that. Well done. We would love for you to ride a boda boda next time, and you enjoy a tour of Nairobi City with a boda boda.
Very good.
Thank you so much. It was lovely meeting you. Have a great time in Kenya. And that was it. Just a few hours with the German foreign minister. What an interesting experience getting him to really feel the Kenyan vibe, the Kenyan culture.
All right, so pretty straightforward. Video, cool, with the minister doing something unusual. It's no surprise that it got the clicks that it did. But remember our initial question. We are no longer the most powerful storytellers in society. Now I want you to watch what our senior correspondent, Richard Walker, did. We'll just show you 30 seconds and then we'll have a short discussion. Technology. Okay, but as that's waiting to be loaded, can somebody give me some views of what they thought about the video that just played? Why do you think it's so... Wow, you were so fast with your hand. By the way, from now on, I'm going to hold this microphone because I don't trust you guys with timekeeping.
Okay, I'm Jasmine, by the way. I thought that was ridiculous, to be honest. I really disliked it. That was nothing but a PR campaign. There was no depth to any question. There was nothing being said. Talk about storytelling. What's the story here? That is just him eating like nice food or whatever. But there's like, sorry, that was not, I have strong words.
Wow. Okay, so it might surprise you that in the comments of that, in fact, I invite you to go to that video and look at it. A lot of the comments are, welcome Germany, this is the kind of collaboration and partnership we need with Kenya. So they might have been making chapatis, but people are thinking about policy design. Who else wants to give me?
I think I will also add to what she's saying. I find this is very interesting, but I really don't think it shows anything to do with German relationship with Africa. What is the dynamics of this? What is the foreign policy interest? I think this kind of stuff is good to make young people interested. Maybe they can now go and Google the name of the foreign minister and realize, oh, maybe German gave. I think it's good for interest, but it does very little in terms of news value.
Okay, who else from that side? Please, one more person. Come on, let's hear you guys. Hey, Gadoni, Gadoni, Gadoni.
So I think I'll add to what he said, but essentially I think it was a very important content piece because Kenyan culture for a very long time we've said, what do we know about Kenya? What do we know about Nairobi beyond safari? And I think the idea of him being able to experience the matatu culture, to experience eating in a kibanda is something that as a tourist, even when you go to another country, you'll experience touristy things before you actually experience what the locals do. So I think it was a very important thing to do, or it was essential for him to experience a Kenyan culture.
Okay, so we're hearing two very different points of view where there's no meat to the bone, but you need that soft entry point, especially for younger audiences. So if this is playing, yeah, okay. This is, by the way, this is our senior correspondent. He's a very serious guy.
In Nairobi with Germany's Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul, who's visiting the region. Mr. Wadephul, thank you for your time, for speaking to DW. So we're here in Kenya. There are so many powers here, kind of vying for influence, vying for deals. You really feel it on the ground here. You have the Gulf states, you have the United States, and of course, most famously, China as well. You're here representing Germany. You say that you want German companies to come here, take the opportunities. Looking at it from the other side, what's your argument to the Kenyans that it's Germany that they should be doing business with and not so much the Chinese?
We were the first country to recognize the new Kenyan state in 1963, the year when I was born. And since then, we have a very long-standing relation with Kenya.
Okay, so you get the gist. Yeah? So, are we the best storytellers in society? Yes or no? It depends. And if we're not, what do we need to do to get to the point where we're getting millions of clicks while having meat on the bone? Let me hear one person before we move to the next question. Jerry?
I feel like we're comparing tomatoes and potatoes because how the story is told and who's listening and who's telling it is different. Yeah, because that lady and the ambassador, yeah, they were not talking about German and Kenyan relations. It was just two people experiencing a culture.
Okay. But the truth is, as a viewer, when you go onto the digital space, there is no distinction. You want news about the German foreign minister, you find it on your feed, right? Which brings me to my next question. And I invite you to take one of the chairs here if you feel so compelled. Question 2. It's really hot. Yeah. Question 2. Read. You have to commit before you know what's up. Thanks, Jennifer. Second question. We keep blaming platforms for killing journalism, but isn't our entire strategy built around their algorithms? We keep blaming platforms for killing journalism. Yeah, because one of the things we'll say is, for example, Meta deprioritized news. They're not pushing news agendas on your feed anymore. Algorithms are hiding news media. But isn't our entire strategy as a news industry built around these algorithms? Let's hear from the people. Yeah.
First of
Janet,
all,
don't look so tired before you answer this question, please.
First of all, I'm very sad while I'm going to answer this question because I was at a certain meeting recently and a very high government official said, I think Africans are becoming too much jokers. You know, we really forget what's important. I don't know if what is happening in our continent is just making us lose focus. And we're like, there's nothing we can do about it. Now we're going to make jokes out of it all over. So people think, I mean, what was sensational there is, it's okay. We don't really mind what policy issues are in his visit. Why would a foreign minister just be visiting for experiencing culture and that is it? What would he be taking the culture of Kenya to Germany for?
So we're also rushing to make clickable content as opposed to valuable content. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. We want sensational issues instead of focusing on what is important to help our lives, to help our future. And as professional journalists, ethical journalists, we also rush. Right, just like you said, in it.
All right. So, Janet, you're explaining a situation here where we've built the jail and we're blaming the jailer.
Exactly.
Let me hear from Jasmine. Yasmin?
Jasmine.
Okay.
I think I don't see it as darkly. I don't blame the platforms for our bad journalism. I think
bad journalism.
I think there's such a. Also, what does journalism even mean anymore? It's not a protected thing at all. So I think we as journalists have kind of like missed the opportunity to create something that is valuable to the audiences. Talk about like who these videos that we just watched were for. Like the first one, maybe if it was for a foodie channel, then it was totally legit, and then I would take back pretty much like 80% of what I just said. But if it was for like a channel like, I don't know, AJ Plus, they would never take this. AJ Plus, though, for example, it's targeted towards the Gen Z, and they're doing a really good job at giving them context and making it snappy and quick and divisive at the same time.
So there's a way to leverage the algorithms and the platforms.
Also, I want to add to that you don't have to always be on the apps and on the algorithms. There are other ways. If you look at the continent, which is it South African? Sorry, they're on WhatsApp. You can create some really, really cool stuff elsewhere. You don't always have to go to the algorithms.
I don't know if Christine is here. Christine is from the continent. She might be able to tell us more about it. No, she's not. But let me hear from you, Jennifer.
For me, I think we have, as she said, we are still stuck in 1992 in terms of the news. But we cannot be stuck. We moved, like in Africa, we moved from drums, as a form of communication. We've moved from, and now algorithms are the ones that are determining how we build our news. Okay, because I would watch that, the short video form. Probably, if maybe just add what are you doing in the interview in the Nganya, ask like what are you doing for Africans and stuff, but make it fun and make it. I work with children; they will not watch the DW interview. They will not watch that.
Okay,
right?
But Jennifer, there is news content that cannot be compressed into 30 seconds content. The kind of work that Africa No Filter does, Chenze is here from Africa No Filter, you cannot, surely, there has to be a limit.
And that's why you have to be innovative, okay? You don't have to...
Hey, Jasmine is about to bite your head off. Please give her the microphone.
No. Yeah, she's on my page.
Okay.
Because you don't have... You can do like short form videos, but you're communicating. It doesn't have to be... It's communicating the same in-depth thing with that. Like for us in Total News, we do news for children, and it's animated. It's animated news for children. It's serious stuff. We're talking about child labor, but it's done by children and it's animated, so it's communicated the same thing. But you have to be innovative in a way because audience are becoming younger and younger. So if you put me that's your boasts. All regards, and but surely I don't think I'll watch that thing for 30 minutes. I don't know.
I just want to make sure that Annabelle is taking notes because she's in our innovative department. Jasmine, let's hear from you.
Okay, I just wanted to add a small thing. I'm totally on the same page. But in terms of it's stuck in my mind that you said we're blaming the algorithms. The one thing that I would be blaming them for is that they fooled us into thinking that journalism is a business. Journalism is not a business.
But it's not charity.
Journalism is a service. It's a profession that we choose out of servitude. I hope, you don't become a journalist to get rich. That's not the thing to do. Journalism is something that we do to inform people so that they can have the agency to be good citizens and vote and do all the things that are necessary to do. But generally, what the what the platforms have done is they have fooled us, and Meta was the first one to do it because they started paying, and I was at the time at Al Jazeera, started paying for views on videos. And so suddenly there was an income to be made outside of ads.
Yeah, and I want to throw this question to Newton. He's sitting quietly there. He didn't know this question was coming. He works with the BBC. He used to be my boss at KTN. Look at me now. So, Newton, what we're hearing is that we're using these tools, especially now with the age of AI. I'm going to come to you, don't worry, to make real-time decisions. In fact, I know that BBC Analytics provides information that we at DW also use, and we're using this information to make real-time decisions, sometimes on a very granular level with our audience. So, we're seeking to optimize news, but we're doing it on platforms that are for profit. So are we risking pushing the editorial line to these big tech giants?
There's that risk, but I think... Okay. I think while there's the risk of playing on their terms, there's also the value that these data gives to us, which is... and we go to them because we are trying to understand our audiences and how they behave and what they are interested in, what questions they are asking, so that we can provide those answers. I think laying down the principle, though, on what is the story and what is proper journalism, then you respond in a way that meets your audiences. In fact, I think the most profound thing I've had today is, the clarity she has about making news for children. I think it's the same clarity we need to have, because if you're making news in Africa, basically you're making news for 17, 18, 19-year-olds. So if you do not have that clarity, whatever the topic is, it is. The bulk of the African population is in that bracket. So do we, as an editor today, I look at the product I produce, are they fit to engage a 19-year-old? Probably that's the question I should be asking myself more.
Okay, so again, piggybacking on the point that, Jasmine, I keep saying Yasmin because these Germans ruined my English. Jasmine, what you are saying, that we can leverage these tools. One more thought from the audience. Take two of them. Please do not touch this microphone. I've been boxing.
So hello everyone, my name is Rohit, I'm from India, I'm an independent journalist. So I am a journalist creator journalist, whatever you call it. I've got over 1.7 million followers, and I just wanted to add to the Jasmine's thoughts. I think it's a very new, cool perspective that she gave us, that platforms made us thinking that the news is a business. But I think there's a positive aspect to that also, because when I started reporting on and uploading my stories on social media, I looked at it from a different perspective, that it's a decentralization of media, that it has given me an opportunity that I can now report on the issues and people will follow it. And I won't be having any issues to go back to the mainstream media, and because all of them were doing the bootlegging kind of stuff. So it was very empowering as well for me. But later on, we all journalists used to take pride in covering a story which has never been covered. But now the platforms are killing it, because they are saying that you need to create trending content, which has been the kind of content people are already talking about. So yeah, it's really sad that they are not pushing the kind of content we wanted to cover. We wanted to show it to the people, and we wanted to do the service, but now it has become a business. And I was with they selected me for a fellowship, and they were training me, and they were constantly asking me to cover the trending topics, and that is I'm doing right now. I'm a successful media creator, but yeah, I don't like this.
Okay. Thanks for your honesty. We'll take one more, and then we have to move to the next question. I'll come to you.
Sure. I'm Florence Adu. I'm from Ghana. I host a podcast.
Akwaba.
Medasi. Or Asante. It's called Global Citizens. And where I'm seeing, piggybacking on some of the other comments, is that what we're talking about is entertainment. And so the idea that news is just news for the sake of information is no more part of the vernacular. So in another session, I posed the question is, should we be calling it news anymore? Should we be thinking about how we categorize what we do in different names that resonate with the younger audiences, but also give us older generations a little bit more understanding of what it is that we're consuming.
I like that. So reimagining what news even means, going back to an initial question that somebody asked, what even is journalism? So I want to close this round by asking one question, which is, did the news media organizations jump too quickly into the digital space without thinking about other diversified models? What about WhatsApp, somebody said? What about newsletters? What about engaging with community? Okay.
Hello, my name is Nkirote Kome. I work with the International Fund for Public Interest Media. I work alongside a lot of media organizations in funding support to help them develop business models. And I'm going to share something that Anya Shifin from Colombia shared with us a few days ago at the Africa Editors Forum. And she mentioned that, before COVID times, a lot of revenue from media enterprises was gained through advertising. And because these media enterprises were sure that people were going to buy their products, buy the paper, watch the news, they could use those platforms to advertise products. So they were providing a service and gaining revenue from advertisements. Then digital platforms came in, and then all of a sudden, they began getting most of the revenue through their Facebook ads and Google ads and whatnot. And then they told media houses, you guys have to innovate. But they stole the model from media houses. So that's something that we need to think about when we talk about how journalism and putting a lot of pressure on media enterprises to innovate themselves out of a systemic problem and a service that they've been providing while gaining revenue from using their platforms to share information about people.
Okay. And because the ecosystem also includes policymakers, I want to ask Cory Mwende a question. She's just come from the AU Summit in Addis. Are our governors thinking about this? Do we even have the leverage as Africa to negotiate with these digital platforms and say, hey, bring some of that ad revenue back to our users? Uko sitapanda. Hey. Are we in a position to negotiate with these digital platforms for better services as African journalists?
So first of all, when it comes to these issues around that happen at the AU Summit, I keep saying this, that deals are made way before this actually happens. We do have an opportunity to leverage and to change. I think we were talking about this before. Legacy media is something that is still going to be here with us. However, we have to figure out how we can sort of stream away from it. And yes, we should actually, particularly within the climate space, I think it is very important to sort of shift how we are communicating the issues that are affecting communities. Right now, we are seeing the drought, but what we are seeing is impact, but there's no way that we are actually communicating in a way that people can understand and do away with words that we don't like, like resilience. But yeah, I think there is a lot of opportunity to leverage on digital, but this is not a conversation that actually happens at the AU Summit. I think even for anyone who knows about the AU Summit, you probably know about it because you saw it on the news or something, but I don't think there is any digital creator who was talking about the governance issues that were being discussed.
Okay, so we're on our own. Thanks for that. I'll take one last input from Milan here. She's a teenager, by the way.
I feel like journalism has power, but it's slowly losing it because as a teenager, I mostly check platforms, but platforms can have information that's not true. So what we tend to do is ask our older siblings or parents, which they get the information from journalism and from media platforms, which we rely on, and we know they have facts and they're saying the truth. So yes, it has power, but it needs to find a way to sustain the power. Yes.
Hey, makofi kwa Milan. I could not articulate myself like that when I was 15. So, third question. Do you still want to stay there, or do you want to...
Just as I take off.
Hey, Milan.
Edith, just...
Come on, Milan. I also want to invite Nkirote because we're about to talk about money and you just exposed yourself. as being somebody who understands how the shoestrings are created. Please come on stage. Janet, you can take a break. So our third question. If journalism is to survive, it can no longer be free. If journalism is to survive, it can no longer be free. So Nkirote, we'll just pick up where you left off.
I don't agree with that statement. And I tied to my point around platforms and platform accountability. I wish there was, I don't know if there's people from South Africa here and the steps that have been made through the Competition Commission of South Africa and how they've been able to hold big tech to account is something that we as other African countries should learn from in a way that can, and they, in the South African model, they've created a fund where Google pays into that fund. And that fund is used to support independent media in South Africa. And this is independent community media that is not in English, that is in English, that is representing different perspectives, and it's free. So, or the current model that has been in operation is still being utilized. So there's a way to ensure that this good and this, essentially what I think journalism should also be classified as a public good, can remain accessible and can remain truthful and all those good things that enable us to have the information we have to do the things we do as citizens.
Okay, so how do we stay free and accessible for everyone, universally?
Still me?
Yeah, still you.
So one of the, allow me to plug in the work that I do. So some of the things that we've been thinking about is how do we set up journalism funds in country? And right now we have one model. I wish my boss was here. He could see me, talking about my work, But anyway, we have one fund that we've set up in Sierra Leone. And it's a collaborative fund between different donors that's geared to support public interest journalism in Sierra Leone. So that's some idea that we have. The other idea that it wasn't our idea, it was from the South African people through their competition commission in the report that they did, and they found big tech accountable, and they fined them, and they reached a settlement, and they created a fund that's managed and led by South Africans for the South African people. That's something else that's being pursued. And the other thing is when you have government prioritizing media. You have this in different countries, I think also in Germany, where the government does fund public interest media and does provide support services for this media to reach people. So there are mechanisms that that can be put there. It's also recognizing, and also private sector has a role to play, stressing the importance of public interest journalism. And we have, I think now a lot of private enterprises are beginning to have those realizations, because at IFPIM we do have the opportunity to sit at that junction, and we do have conversations with private companies, big tech companies, and they're like, we see the importance of this, but how do we get involved? So it's creating avenues for them to support journalism to remain as a public good.
Okay, so one of the ways that media houses are trying to survive is through subscription models. So I want to see by show of hands, how many of you have subscribed to at least one news media outlet? At least one, where you pay hard cash. At least 2? 3? Hey, mkona pesa. You got money. 4? 5? Wow. 6? So 5 is the cap. Okay, so Jennifer, if we're saying that this is the way to get access to good quality media because newsrooms can't survive through ad revenue alone, are we saying that democratization of media is dying? Because if you can't afford to, or if you won't pay for it, then where do you get good news from?
And for me, this is where collaboration comes in, okay? Because I think media, for the longest time, it has been competing for views, for wherever. I think for us to be able to survive, we need to collaborate. Okay, you see, like now TikTok learned a lesson that for us to be able to get the many followers, we have to have our content being able to be posted across all platforms. Like, I think when TikTok started in 2019, 2018 there, you could post a TikTok video and it'd go on Twitter and it'd go on Instagram. Why Instagram refused that, okay? Now TikTok has already overtaken Instagram. So what is the lesson there? Are we able to see, I work with children. I don't do African Uncensored, but I have a story that will interest children from Africa. And can we collaborate? So children will be able to access really good content, quality content from African Uncensored, and they will get their audience, okay? You get what I'm saying? So we need to start thinking about collaboration, okay? Because let me just do the moshene. You know, for those guys who don't know moshene, please ask your Kenyan neighbor what moshene is. Moshene is sweetest when it's shared, okay? Moshene is not sweet when you stay with it, okay? And as news media, we are moshenes. It's only that we call ourselves nice names. That's how if
we're paid to gossip.
We are paid to gossip. It's only that if you don't have a startup name, please, Moshene is a nice one to start your news channel. So, but we do not share. Okay, you know that Akamade in the estate, you know, who is the news source, you know. But how do they do that? Is you go to Mama Nani and are we able to use the same model? Thank you.
Collaboration. I want to hear from Milan for a second. Have you subscribed to any news information website? Where do you even get your news? Do you even listen to the news, watch the news?
Yeah, sometimes, because...
Talk to me through your process.
Process?
Yeah, of like, when do you ever look for the news? Is it when there's a breaking news situation?
Like, if I sit on a platform, or if like I want to watch like what's been going on in the country, and it's something that happens like once, rarely. And you see...
Please hold the microphone close.
Sorry. I feel like the thing that a lot of people don't think about is the fact that we can't be telling news the same way from 2000 up to 2026.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to change, because I know that news, I know the way news works, I know the way it is. So to someone my age, it's boring, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
It's boring. So I don't know, like, if it's it's not changed, like nothing interesting has been added, of which I'm not saying like to filter the news or anything. Like, let the news remain the same, but we need to grow as a journalism industry, because then there's no interest for people like my age anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for those contributions. Chenze, I want to come back to you. He works with Africa No Filter. When do you go? Africa Uncensored. What did I say? Africa No Filter. Africa Uncensored. So how are you surviving? Because investigative journalism is very expensive. And if you're relying on grants and donors, there's a risk of being captured, so that you're constantly talking about malaria because the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation are the ones who are sponsoring you, for example. How are you striking this balance?
Oh, sorry. First of all, there's some convergence between No Filter and Uncensored anyway. How we look at things is the value that you're able to give the audience. So over like the last 3 years, our model has evolved. If you are going to check some of our work from 2024, you find at the end of the feature or documentary, there's a call to action. You can come and support our work. And I've found that to be more effective than what we initially started with as an organization, which was to directly ask you to donate. Now when we ask at the end of the video, there's a lot more action. So the reports that I get to see is there's a lot more people who are willing to own our work without necessarily us labeling them as subscribers or asking them to subscribe, all that entire New York Times model or what have you. These are the things that really work in the West, but here they just don't work. That has been our model number one. The second one has been identifying our strengths. So not only are we just a media outfit, we also do excellent production work, which we are able to put up.
Who says?
I say. I have to beat my own drum here. But which we put a price tag on and say DW can come and commission us to do this for them. And in the end, that helps support our public interest journalism. And we're able to keep it free. You just come to YouTube and watch it. So far, that's the model that we've been doing. Is it the easiest? Not exactly. It's a lot of struggles, but we found that it works.
Jasmine, I want to come back to you because earlier you said journalism is a service, and I said it's not charity. So how do we produce a service that is quality without going broke?
That's what we pay taxes for, sorry.
But not all media houses are public broadcast media.
Then the government needs to set up different ways to fund us.
Okay, so become more innovative in our funding streams. All right, so on that note, I'm going to move us to the fourth question. But before I do, let me share some stats with you because you mentioned South Africa. Their subscription rate at News 24, which is the highest, is about 0.2% of the entire population. They have about 100,000 subscribers. And that's nothing compared to the rich countries in Europe where the subscriber rate is at least 18% of news consumers. So we still have a long way to go, or there's an opportunity. Thank you so much. So who wants to take the hot seat? Yes, you can add something.
Okay. So there's someone who has done a research about the subscription model in Africa, and they said we are doing it the wrong way. So can we think the Kadogo economy kind of way for subscription instead of us doing New York Times or...
Explain the Kadogo economy.
Kadogo economy is where you go small. So if I want that particular story, I can get it for 10 shillings instead of forcing me to pay 2,000 shillings per month. So I'll just pay for my story and then I'm done, okay? And then that one is more sustainable. And they did their research and it worked. And that's why like Viusasa, they've been very, very sustainable and they're growing because they're using Kadogo economy. Thank you.
Okay, I like that. Custom make it to the markets that we exist in. Please put the microphone there. So I want to invite Njeri because we're about to discuss something that you work on. Njo hapa, Chenze, please take a seat. Yeah, and if anybody else is interested in speaking about state surveillance, please take a seat. So let's show you a short video first. Njeri, tell me if you recognize the man in this video. Lucy. All right, you get the general gist of the story. If you're not from Kenya, that video was taken after mass anti-government protests in July of last year. And one of the most prominent activists in this country, Boniface Mwangi, whose lovely wife is sat here with us today, was arrested and he was charged with terrorism. Now, this is a very serious crime. So we ask today, state surveillance is so high that journalists just can't be independent anymore. That's the premise. Njeri, what do you think? Because if Boniface Mwangi with his profile can be brought from his home, actually tell us what happened.
When?
When, yeah. Pick at any point in the timeline.
So we all know he's been very vocal about issues of accountability and holding the government to account. And so it's been consecutive over the years, and I dare say from 2013, that we have so many court cases, and they vary. It depends with whatever they want to throw at us. But none of those cases has ever stuck in court. And I think what a journalist will find themselves, if Boni has such a profile, and these things are coming at him, what of me? Who knows me? What will happen to me? And we've seen a lot of people also being arrested and being taken to court. And what that does is people start censoring themselves.
Okay, let's talk about a new phenomenon that we are seeing within East Africa, which is cross-border arrests. So you don't know if it's a Tanzanian or Ugandan authorities who are after you and putting spyware on your phone. Now you have been a victim of this because you did a story with the BBC, an expose. Take it from there.
I did a story with the BBC, an expose on young girls that were being trafficked for sex. So young that they were underage, but then the immediate reaction of government was that it's fake. Then what happens is you find your sources are exposed because government, they call it Big Brother. They can see everywhere. They know where you are, who you're with, what you're doing, when you came there, when you left there. So they know who we were talking to, they know where we were. And again, I think it goes back to the question that was earlier about trust and is mainstream media, and we are mainstream media, right? But then you find that your sources now are compromised. You fear for their lives, you fear for your own life, and you're fighting with government who has bigger muscle, who has a bigger voice, who can literally just squash you as an individual, as a media house, you and your sources. So there's that threat and that fear of, yes, there's a place of telling the story and telling the truth and telling it how it is, but then when the story comes out, have you made a big difference? And what kind of difference? It could be a bad difference. What kind of difference have you made? So that intimidation, that harassment, that being followed, being threatened, being called to court, being told to go and write a statement, that's not fun.
Yeah, talk to me about that personal impact on you and now your family, because your children are wedged between these two very important figures in activism. How does it play on your day-to-day?
I always think I will never know what my kids go through because I never went through anything like that. I have 3 children, all Gen Zs. And because I don't know what they fear, and again, because of this, it's everywhere. It's in school, it's in class, it's at break. My kids will hear things before I know. My kids will come and ask me about something I'm not ready to talk about, which I was kind of hoping they will not have found out, or they will not find out. And I got away with it when they were younger. But it's not just my kids, it's also my parents and aging parents, and they see these things on mainstream media and they worry. And even my kids now, they're like, should I call? Let me not call mom, let me not call dad, let me call somebody else, because they don't want to hear it directly from us. It's hard. Yeah. It's very difficult, yeah.
So, Chenze, when the job is threatening your well-being because of the amount of state surveillance, how do you continue to do it? How do you make sure that you remain independent?
So, for us at Africa Uncensored, easily...
Can you tell us what you do at Africa Uncensored? I realize that I didn't tell people here.
Good. So, in a nutshell, we are an independent public interest journalism outfit based here in Nairobi. And what we are mostly known for is our investigative journalism. So, those stories that people don't want to be said, we will be the ones who say them, and that's why it's uncensored in our name. So that's where we are coming from. So we've existed for a decade now, and we've done that line of storytelling. So for us, I like telling new members of our team when they join, when they're onboarding, I like telling them we are in a quote-unquote a bubble, in the sense that we believe so much in the work that we do that many times those aspects of the safety and everything are not like the things that we parade as our first line of defense. Yeah. It's the work, but also it's because that has been ingrained over time. But then the other bit is part of like the safety and all of these precautions we take, like almost becomes second nature. Our work goes through lots of thorough review, and then there's all of these risk assessments and everything. But then, at the end of the day, we're also people. So in a way, this does get to you. We have an editor in our edit suite who gets to see all of that blood, all of these things that ethically, by the time a production is going out, you find we've tried to moderate, to play nice by everything that regulates our space. But then, at the end of the day, that's a person. At the end of the day, you send a reporter to the field, they are also a person. Some of the things we do is how to protect their mental spaces, and then the others will be after a story is produced and it's published. In our case, mostly it's on YouTube. There's the comment section and there's social media. So for the comment section, people can be very brutal depending on where they lie, especially if it's a story touching on governance and politics. So they could be on either part of the divide. That gets to you as a person.
Yeah, and sometimes there's also the idea of paid users who come and flood your comment section, but they've been paid by state figures.
Exactly. So you wake up to a hashtag online. You go on X and there's all these people who've been paid, and I know in the previous round you talked about the creators, but that's the other side of it. And somehow you have to, quote unquote, protect your space.
Okay.
So for a long time, I've handled the African Census online spaces, and the advice I used to give to our producers was, let us handle this while you just look away. We will filter the feedback and give it to you.
All right.
And then professionally, there's the kind of help you can seek. But we tend to create a buffer. So we are not the most ideal case study for this because we've done this over time. We've just developed the natural
building as you go, or changing
yeah.
the tire as you're driving the car. I've
Yeah.
heard one expression. But we're talking about specifically surveillance. What kind of surveillance tools, technologies, weapons have been launched against Africa Uncensored, maybe even you personally?
That's broad. There is the overall bit. We work under the assumption that constantly we are being watched. So typically you go with the safeguards that most times your personal communication devices may not be the most secure. So you figured out ways in which you can talk to your story sources, for instance. That's first. And second, need to know bases. I work in that newsroom, and there are reporters, there are producers, and they have their editors, but I don't necessarily know every single thing about the stories they do. That's deliberate to protect us because I don't know who's listening to my calls. And I don't know, for instance, our co-founder is John Allan Namu, is usually a person of interest. So typically the assumption is every time you talk to John Allan, wherever you are, you become a person of interest either to the state or any other people. And then secondly, you might be unknown, but you're in our newsroom and you do some work that just exposes you. The assumption is your communication devices might not be secure, so typically you put all the necessary precautions. So meeting sources, you figure out how that is best done. There are all manner of apps when you come to forums like this you get exposed to. You evaluate them on a case-by-case basis. The same goes to pre- and post-production things that you get to do, because the thing that we work with is the realization that the surveillance is here to stay. And in our case, our work will always ruffle feathers. And those tools are many, they are varied. There is what our intelligence services have that just unearths everything. The other protection is you just decide what's priority that you need to keep on your devices and what's not.
Okay.
We don't trade convenience for our safety.
I like that. So ensuring that surveillance is not an exception, it's the norm, and building resilience around that. Where's Corey? Resilience. So Jerry, we're hearing that surveilled we may be, but it doesn't stop us from being independent. So any advice from young journalists here who maybe have an expose, but they don't have the BBC infrastructure to support them, what can they do?
I think it's important that you stay within, find a network, because safety, there's that animal kingdom line that there's safety in numbers. You're not safe by yourself. We have to build a collective community and a practice of care for one another. It's everything from how the work that we do affects us at a personal level, but also how we find support. How do I know how to check my phone? How do I know what I should not keep on my phone? Where should I meet my sources? So it's knowing who to talk to, when to talk to them, how to talk to them. And this is not your best friend in that sense, because here is where they will find you, everything you do, who you're talking to. They say even WhatsApp. So if you want to talk to somebody, go talk to them, tell them, let's have coffee. And then and keep your phones away, because even then, this is a microphone, you just get tapped, even in the house when you're talking. So that's one way. But also even that getting to know each other, who's doing what stories. But it's not about just the stories. It's about how you're keeping safe, how you're taking care of yourself, where you're going, how you're getting there, when you're coming from there. Who knows where you are? Always, always, always have somebody know where you are. Because if you don't get back when you said you would, what happened? There's the time for reaction. Recently my husband traveled, and when he got to the airport, he said, I am being looked for because somebody told him. So he had to switch off his phone and told me, if I'm not home within an hour, then you know what to do. And I was like, an hour is too long. Time from the airport to the house. So knowing when to switch off and what to do, you must have a plan. How important is this story? Where is it ruffling feathers? Because if you're ruffling feathers somewhere, they will catch you before you go too far. Yeah.
Okay, so moving with both eyes wide open. Thank you so much to the two of you. I don't want to open it up to us because we are not investigative journalists, so I think we should leave it to them. And here comes our last question, ladies and gentlemen. You may take your seats. Before that, let's show you this. This is my favorite video on the internet, guys. I know it says African documentaries by BBC, but the guy generally meant international media. Enjoy. Oh no.
Okay, sorry.
Every day, James waits and tries to get the fortune. I am poor. I have nothing apart from spam.
Okay, some comical relief for all of us. So now I want to ask Newton to please take one of our seats because this last question is very relevant to you. Annabelle, I'm going to have to put you on the spot and put you on one of our seats as well. Yep. And Benson, because I knew you had a lot to say about this topic, please welcome back onto the stage. Now, the question here for us is, African journalists have outsourced African storytelling to Western media. True or false? False? Do you agree? Put your hand up. African journalists have outsourced African storytelling to Western media. Disagree? Put your hands up. Okay, and then there's a lot of people who are kind of in between. Yeah? All right, so the BBC was mentioned there, but I think it's because it's a legacy media. Are we responsible for perpetuating that kind of narrative about Africa, even though we are Africans working for international media?
All right. I think first and foremost, I need to clarify that I don't speak for the BBC. And yeah, I've worked with them for many years until last year, so I'm not with them anymore. But
Come to us.
we can talk behind the tent. About outsourcing our storytelling, I would say there are elements of it that may seem true but are not necessarily so out of intention to malign Africa or to show poverty. And it's something I struggled with as a journalist myself over the years with the different organizations that I've worked on, because there are many realities of Africa that exist side by side. On this, just down the road, we have a major highway that Kenyans are very proud of, the expressway. Not too far away from it, we have one of the biggest slums in the continent. Not too far away, under that bridge, there are street kids who are sleeping there. Across the street, in Upper Hill, we have what we would call our financial district, so to speak. Big corporates, international companies that have set up there. All those are Kenyan stories, and they are part of the Kenyan identity. The fact that, unfortunately, what seems to be dominant, probably, and we've even built a tourism circuit around it, is the poverty in Kibera, that you can go and be a slum tourist and stuff like that, is what seems to capture the attention. But I think if the media is to tell the Kenyan story, the African story, we must show all these aspects holistically.
But we're talking here about very granular information ecosystems. So it's a Kenyan story, Kenyans will watch it, maybe Tanzanians and Ugandans might. But if a breaking situation happens today in Benin, in Angola, where are we all going to get that information from? Isn't it BBC? Isn't it Al Jazeera, DW, CNN?
And it's because it's those organizations that have invested in that capacity to tell those stories from those places. It could be an issue of who has the muscle, but also who has put in the infrastructure for that. And it's a challenge for us also as African practitioners in this field to find a way of owning those spaces and creating also the networks through which we can work together to make this a reality. Otherwise, we'll just be complaining from the sidelines without putting up the necessary networks, because it doesn't have to mean that we have pound for pound, dollar for dollar investment with the BBC or DW or Al Jazeera, but we have the networks. We know each other. I've worked previously, when we worked with you at KTN, I know companies in Tanzania and Uganda we had partnerships with, of which when I did a story for KTN in Kenya, I would provide the same story for that channel in Tanzania for the same. Are we leveraging those collaborations enough to be
Okay.
able to own our stories and tell more?
Let me ask Benson that question. Cross-border journalism, is that a reality in Africa? Because really, I would love to one day wake up and go onto a Nigerian station in Kenya to hear firsthand from them what's going on in northern Nigeria.
Okay, first of all, let me answer the first question. I do think that we still own our own stories, but the level of outsourcing is ridiculous. A lot of organizations are, let's just say, people who are in Epstein files are still funding a lot of the media across Africa. And that level of just outsourcing is not something I feel is equal. I completely agree that our narrative is still being told by the West in different ways. We don't need to have I show speed to change the narrative. I mean, there's probably someone in the States right now who thinks a lot of African men really just have a lot of sperm. And that's the only side of Africa they'll see. So yes, it's just not right to have that level. What was your question now?
Why are we then not investing in this infrastructure? Why hasn't Dangote, Mo Ibrahim, the billionaires of Africa, come together and said, why don't we have a Reuters for Africa?
I think it's selfishness, to be honest. Someone was here talking about collaboration. I think we're selfish. We don't collaborate as news agencies at all. We had a really great conversation with Andre from DW and talking about how even community media here would not even share, let's say, a platform like Meltwater. Yes, as one media house, I might not find it valuable, but if we are 5 media houses, why are we not sharing some of these resources together to cut costs and be more sustainable? I think we're very selfish, and it's mostly driven by greed.
Okay, so we're selfish. But to the ones who have the money, Annabelle.
Okay, representing the Western
Yeah,
media.
representing the Western media. Sorry to put you on the spot, but is it the responsibility of international media to reshape the narrative about Africa? Because every news media organization has its own agenda.
I would say partly. I think I would say partly because the responsibility lies with the local voices. So what we do with the DW, we collaborate with the local journalists. That's the first step. But the people who decide are still Western citizens, and the hierarchies in the big media houses are so strong and so stiff that it's hard to get the voices of the local journalists be in the everyday meetings and get their stories up. So it's often dictated from the top what to do. And this needs to change. But we're working on that. But what you said, I agree with that too. We need to come out of our silos and collaborate. So it should be normal that, for example, local producer have their program ad on DW's network, because we, as DW, we collaborate with a lot of partner stations all over the planet, but we give them our products, and it should be also the other way around. So I think helping and collaborating is key in our media landscape.
Yeah, and to support what you're saying, Africa No Filter did a study which they commissioned in partnership with the African Union. And they found that wire agencies, this is Reuters, AFP, AP, accounted for almost half of the sample stories about Africa. And out of those news agencies, only 19% of them were based in Africa. And what this means is that the agenda-setting power on Africa still remains with non-Africans and non-African organizations. So you still believe that we haven't outsourced storytelling? Newton.
Yes, we haven't, but there's that aspect on who's telling that story also, because also for our local national-facing platforms, there's a very inward-looking tradition where we only tell stories about ourselves and if it's Kenya, if it's Uganda, if it's elsewhere, that we rarely will go and give a Pan-African perspective or seek it. And there's an attempt to that. I've seen now programs that are, being introduced to try and exploit, give more African perspectives. But we have a very inward-looking culture within our local media establishments, and it would help if we looked more broadly, because there are a lot of things also that are broaden, that are common across board.
Okay, so what are you suggesting? That in order for DW to broadcast in Africa, there has to be an Edith Kimani? If CNN wants to broadcast in Africa, then it has to be Larry Madowo? Wink, wink.
Not necessarily, but we are on the ground, you are on the ground, you understand the nuance, the realities, both cultural, both historical. You do not have to sit on, on a computer to come up, with the facts on what happened the last 3-4 years here, as somebody else may come. But I also have had colleagues who've worked in Africa much longer than I have been alive, and so in terms of that historical understanding, they may have that. But it helps if you have even local journalists telling the stories from their patch. I'm not saying it should be the exclusive area for them, but if there's talent and it's showing, that's why they are shining on those platforms, and they know that space, they know their audiences, they know those stories. Who better than them to tell them?
Okay, so let me hear from the guys who are sat here. How does Africa and Africans reclaim the narrative in our news media spaces when we don't own the news media spaces? Okay.
Hi, my name is Piera. I'm a food systems freelance storyteller. And I think one of the ways that we can reclaim storytelling in Africa is actually using the methods that we just spoke about, which is digital. Because there's almost no boundaries in the digital world. You can tell your stories to anyone, anywhere. And I think one of the most fascinating things I've come to realize is how big TikTok is as a platform by itself. And if we want to tell the stories that we want Africans to hear from us, then we need to leverage the existing digital platforms to get our voice out.
Okay, so there's no escaping the digital platforms. Let me hear one more response. Don't be shy now. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. I'm going to come to you if you don't raise those hands.
Hi, my name is Hope. I'm not a journalist, but I think this is a lovely conversation. I think many a times we like, for lack of a better word, blaming the West. I think why don't we sit with ourselves for some time and see what are we not doing as a country ourselves, because we have local journalism, we have radio stations and other media stations locally. So how do we leverage that so that if the West is telling a story, we've already told it because it's our story.
You had something to add?
Yeah, I think for me it's just we don't own these platforms. They're owned by the West. We need to create and own our own platforms so that we can own our own narratives. Tell them the way we want them to.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, if that's the case, I will close this round of questions. Thank you very much to the three of you. And we will now come to our final question. And this one is actually for all of us. Oh, it was a... Yeah, so based on this unconference that we've just had, what actions do you think can save journalism? So the following actions are the ones that you're going to tell me. Based on what we've heard today, what steps do you think are practical that we can take from today here to save journalism, particularly in the context of Africa? I'll give you 1 second to think about it. Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's very important. As an Indian, I get to see, I also watch such reels and I really enjoy that. So while we talk about stereotyping, it's very important to also highlight, like Newton talked, about the negative, so-called negative stories. So in India, in journalism community, it is said that we do negative stories to bring positive change. So yeah, that's all for me.
I need you to explain that a little bit.
Yeah, because there are many issues which needs to be worked on. So if media doesn't highlight that and you're just saying that, okay, don't stereotype, you're just stereotyping and people are, dying out of hunger or they're, living in a tent. So I think those kind of stories needs to be highlighted while we keep that in mind that we also do not try to stereotype this. This is not the only reality they have. So I think we, as an Indian and African, we share the same kind of things. And I get to see in the international media or on social media that people try to highlight few bad things about India or few bad things about other developing countries. So yeah, I totally get that. But at the same time, we also, as a journalist, it's our responsibility to bring out those so-called negative stories.
Okay, so democratic, fact-based, sober journalism. Any other ideas of how journalism can be saved? Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Hesbon Hansen Ochieng Owila. I'm a university professor at Aga Khan University. I think I have two things to say. The first way in which we can save journalism is to get the big tech companies to pay for content. That is sacrosanct. We cannot have a situation where the interview that Yvonne did yesterday is on a big tech platform. If you didn't watch it on Citizen didn't have those numbers. But if you watch it on a big tech platform, they force an advert on you. They make money on a content that they did not produce. So the conversations around bargaining code legislation must take root in almost all African countries for us to save journalism. We can't have people who are not producing content, they have no public interest dimension in their business model, benefiting from media houses that are producing premium content using a lot of money. The number two is the stories that we are telling. So African storytellers and generally journalism all over the world. The one thing that we need to realize today is that there are three critical values, cultural values of news. One is newness. Number two is drama. Number three is globality. Number one and number three are gone. Anyone can reach the globe today. Newness is gone. With Twitter, Facebook, Live, it's gone. How do we redefine the drama? Because we still have that drama. How do we tell stories that have the local consciousness? If it is a Kenyan story, whether it is told by DW, BBC, KTN, Citizen, does it have a Kenyan consciousness? Is it a story that whoever is going to consume will see the challenges that they are facing in Kenya and how they can address those challenges and also see the opportunities out of those stories? Now, such stories have two critical elements that journalists have to find a way of infusing. One is the element of enjoyment. We must make the important enjoyable. And then secondly, they must have the element of progress. So if you're going to tell me the challenges, also find a way in that story of telling me about the opportunities. So if we infuse the element of drama, which we've not lost, that one we can't lose to big tech companies, we can't lose to Facebook Live or anything. That is the creative conceit that a journalist still has.
Okay.
And it will retain journalism for us.
Very briefly, I just want to ask a quick follow-up. Isn't that asking the journalists to do too much? I mean, on one side there, we had that perhaps we need to start developing our own platforms. Now you're saying we need to be entertaining, and we also need to fact check on top of all that and put the consciousness of the person, of our subjects at the center of it. I just want to go to a press briefing and tell you what the guy said.
Yeah, and you see, if you're going to a press briefing and telling me what the guy says, I won't consume it because I can actually get that guy. I can get that guy at the point that guy is saying. So why would you tell me something, for instance, that President William Ruto is saying at 9, yet President William Ruto was on UDA TV Live and I was seeing it. So, and I'm not saying we need to be entertainers. I'm just saying that we have to figure out how we would make that which is important to our consumers entertaining. Okay. So you don't lose the significance of the issue, but you just make it an issue that doesn't turn out to be a lecture.
Okay, I like that. Any more thoughts? Oh.
Thank you so much. And I totally agree with some of the points you've raised. And I think I'm also plugging in a case here for the systems and the government, the role of the government in protecting journalism. And I'm plugging in the South African case example because it's a real live example. There, the government, through the Competition Commission, came together and did this research body. And they didn't do it alone. They did it with civil society, the South African National Editors Forum, lots of academic bodies. And there was a huge conglomerate of interested parties vying to support South African journalism because South African journalism was at a point of fracture. So what I'm plugging in 2 points here. The government has a role, but this role is just not, and that role gives it sovereignty and independence and gravitas, and it can go to the main stage and hold big tech to account. But in order to be able to hold big tech to account, it needs a lot of data, information, case studies, all of which is brought by independent research bodies, academia, editors, and practitioners within the field. So there's a role that government has to play in ensuring that government is sustained. And I think as Africans sitting in this room, and I'm a Kenyan, we actually have a competition authority of Kenya. And they have been working with the Competition Commission of South Africa. So they're making baby steps, but I think our government is still trying to understand the value of this. And I think now that they've seen that there's $100 million coming to South Africa, they're like, let's try and see.
Hey, Banco Tuch. Okay.
Okay, my name is Emeka Mayaka. I'm a newspaper editor in Kenya. And I also run an organization called Text Africa Kid, which believes that newspapers are going to die. Now, to save journalism, we need to change attitude in the way, one, we package it, and then two, we distribute it. Audiences are not going to look for journalism. What is going to happen is that it is journalists to look for audiences where they are. That is, in my humble view, we need to change the old attitude of thinking that it is us who know what our audiences need and get to know, do research, get data to know what is it that those audiences desire, and then we do what we are calling a form of journalism that addresses user needs. What are the needs of the African audience? And take it into the space where that audience is. That is in the digital space.
And you also spoke about changing how we distribute the news.
Changing how we distribute the news, the traditional formats are not going to survive technology. When I'm talking about the traditional formats, I'm talking about how many of us here listen to radio? How many of us here read newspaper? Very few, isn't it? So if we realize that, for example, the influence of the traditional media is waning. What was your question?
Yeah, shrinking.
Is shrinking. Then we must innovate by getting different formats. For example, if we realize, as Professor has said, that Google and the big tech are making more money from our content. We are supposed to sit in these conversations and then see, for example, how do we come up with the mechanisms that take our content directly to audiences without these middlemen who are taking money away from our content.
Wow, those are some very pertinent and poignant points. Any one last person before we close? Oh, Janet has been raising a hand. I'm going to close with you.
So I'll be very quick. I think one of the ways we can save journalism is please subscribe to independent creators. Subscribe to their Substacks, to their YouTubes, to their podcasts, because a lot of them have the passion to do this, but we need to be less starving artists. We have to have a meal on the table. So subscribe to them. Give them your coins.
You're tired of being paid by exposure.
Exposure is not legal tender.
Okay, let's close with Janet. It's actually good because we started with her.
Thank you. What I've got from all the other speakers is that we really need to adapt. Earlier on, before I left the stage, I wanted to say Gen Zs are driving us at a breakneck speed because now we have to act according to what they want. And then what worries the speaker who just came maybe a minute or two ago is these Gen Zs are the ones going to become the grandparents that we're looking at that should have been reading the newspapers. And now he says, the people who are not even focusing on it now, would they do that in future? I think we should be able to adapt. Earlier on, I mentioned something about knowing our audience, that there are Gen Zs, but also there are elder people who still listen to radio. I've had recent research still saying that radio is the most consumed media. So there is Gen Z, but the speed they're taking us is, can we get something for them? If what they want for social media is the one that's a joke but really gives them a message, is what we should be able to craft as journalists or as journalism. That's what we should be able to craft for them and give it to them on the platform they consume the most. But also remember the other audience that still needs the mainstream media. Thank you.
Oh, okay, fabulous. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being a part of our unconferencing session here at the Africa Media Festival. Now, we started by asking if journalism is in a state of flux. And I asked, is journalism dead? So after our conversation, let me see by show of hands. If you believe journalism is dead, please raise your hand. If you believe there's a future for me, please raise your hand. That's all I need to know. Thank you so much. You can find our work on dw.com, specifically 77%. But for now, you've been invited for tea right there, and then there'll be a live recording at the main plenary shortly after that. Thank you so much for your attention.